How do we miss that? All right. This is backlash reel. Shows that I'm not using any spool tension. Pull this Daiwa right out my butt crack. There we go. With the Aldebaran in the back of my waders, I can definitely feel that it's a little more compact than the Alphas, that's for sure. It doesn't chafe as much. I see a pretty flower everywhere I go. Everywhere I go. Everywhere I go. Happy life. Happy life. We switched up to the Aldebaran, and during the switch we had a catastrophe of sorts. Grabbed myself a Gatorade this morning off the counter. Went to guzzle me some Fierce Grape goodness, only to find out that it was low calorie goodness. So we're gonna have to guzzle some nuts real quick. Ooh, calories. We're mildly in the way of milk. I don't know what you say there. This absolutely beautiful brown. He looks like he's a 10-pound brown out of Alaska. Oh. I don't want to fight you for too much longer. Look at you. Look at you. You're probably 5 pounds. You're a monster. You're 22, 23. You're behemoth river smallmouth. All right, a couple more casts. Then we're going to switch it up to something that will... Oh no, the whole branch is going to come down, isn't it? Oh no. Please, line. No. Something worth of note. The drag capability, I'm fairly low on the dial, and it's got room to go for days. And it's way more drag than you'll ever need throwing light line. Another thing worth mentioning is, with this reel, as I mentioned, with the control and the thumb access to the spool, I find myself always letting my thumb glide on that spool. Always. It's just second nature. It's a habit where I didn't have to do that. And again, we're talking about casting the lighter payloads, and you want the bait to come off the rod tip at a straight trajectory. You don't want any drift side to side. So you want the brakes to be lower. And as I fish this more and more, going back from the Alphas to this, it's pretty obvious that my thumb is always on the spool. Whereas with the Alphas, I didn't really need that level of interaction. And that's... See how when I'm finishing with my casting stroke, the rod's pointed to where the lure's splashing down? That's what you want. You don't want it to pendulum left to right. So I'm casting over my left shoulder. So the bait's gonna kind of move on an arc, but you don't want the resistance of the braking causing it to drift and swing on the pendulum like this. See how it's swinging since there's resistance, since there's no line paying out? And then when you let go, it just kind of drops at a straighter trajectory. You don't have to do that with that Alphas. And if I go up to, say, 4 on the brake dial, see how it moved about 2 feet, 3 feet off to the right? The braking caused that swing with the lighter bait. With a heavier bait, the impact is less noticeable. So if we go to let's go to max on the brake. See? Same rod tip position, same release, and went about 20 feet to the right. Because it's taking the momentum and it's carrying it along that arc because of the resistance here. So we're gonna go back down to, can you guys read that? Oh, 4, 3 3/8. We're actually at 3.5 right now. But you see what rod tip was? Right in line with where it splashed down. I'm not making this up. That goes a long way to determining how accurate you're going to be, which is why you can't throw light baits on standard reels. That's why these exist, specifically for that reason. You can get a 1/16 ounce bait to go on pretty much any reel out there, but you're going to have to, if you're aiming for that target, you're going to have to release all the way, you know, almost 90 degrees to the left so it swings on over there. Same thing if you have a underspooled reel. because there's so little line coming off that spool that adds natural braking. I like it. I don't like the fact that it's as big as it is. I don't like the non-clicky, but everything else I like. I'll be damned. It's a safer reel to cast, without a doubt. There's no question. Because again, when you're miles away from your car, you're carrying one stick, all it takes is that one blow up. Gentlemen, ladies, and anyone in between, I welcome you all. And today we're going to be getting up close and personal with a brand spanking new reel from Japan. The brand new Alphas Air, I guess it's a TW. So we're not going to waste anybody's time. We're going to get right into it. And because this is from Japan Lure Shop, they sent us a Megabass 110, which is always cool. They always send you buy a reel, they send you a plug. That's cool. But I think that's how I've obtained most of my Megabass collection. So this reel, do I need a BFS reel, a new one? I don't know if this is a true BFS reel. I don't need a million BFS reels, guys. I have 150,000 different reels, 175,000 different rods, and I have 2 BFS reels. I just blew this one up the other day because I hit a twig on a back cast. But I can use a third, I'll be honest with you. I can use a third. So we're kind of excited to see what this reel's capable of. We're going to crack the package, do a once over. Get a spool weight and find out what makes her tick on the inside. And what do you got here? So it's like a greenish gray, but very flat, like a true gunmetal metallic, like a true picture. What was it? E46 style BMW M5, and those tuning fork spoke rims. I had those rims. That's why this is the color of those. SLP Plus. We can't read that. Stuff that we don't know how to read and we don't need to read. And it tells us how to put the line inside that little thing in the center. Okay, that's awesome. Oh. Quick release spool hatch. Non-fixed inductor. Pretty red accents. While we got the spool out, let's get a weight on her. It's a pretty shallow spool. It's nothing otherworldly, so we can definitely categorize this as a BFS reel. You're not putting 100 yards of 30-pound braid. You're probably only going to fit. Wow, it's narrow. It feels light, even with the bearing. Which, look how small that bearing is. They have that big cup to take up all the space. We're not going to use a spool pin removal to get that out, just to really see and get a weight without the spool, because we don't want to damage anything. There's always that risk. That potential always exists that you can mess stuff up. So looking at how much milling is done on the internal axle here, I'll go ahead and use the runaway spool. Use the Avail as an example as well. Like, this is a pretty lightweight spool. Comes in at what? 9 grams? 8 grams? What does that say? 8 grams. 7.96. That's light as hell. Right? And you see all that milling. You got to be careful when you deal with spools that are cut to this extent around the axle where it kind of mates, because if you use too heavy line, you'll bend the spool shaft. Wow. So about the same way. We'll call it a wash, 7.9 versus 8.06, right? Is that what it was? Yeah. So even with that external brake rotor, and all the plastic bits that make it up, it's still fairly light. Again, very narrow. Got a narrow spool, and it's... that was horrible because of the perspective, but we'll get caliper measurements and all that kind of jazz. But yeah, she's a BFSer, all right. I like that red accent. That's different. Let's see. Now, I'm a huge fan of the Aldebaran BFS. I think out of the box, it really is the nicest of all the BFS reels. It weighs nothing. It's not the most refined reel. I mean, it's got enough going for it, but refinement isn't where it really truly wins. 136.97 with line. Wow. It's close without line. It's not going to be that much because whatever, but that's pretty close. Doesn't win, but... Really? No clicky drag. That sucks. I'm literally heartbroken there. The clicky drag for me is a must. Like that right there. That's what it's all about. You're fishing light drag, so you're gonna have runoffs. Why the hell wouldn't Daiwa put that in this? That sucks. That's a big letdown. That's a loss, a massive loss in brownie points right there. Like, I thought that was a given, to be quite honest with you. I didn't even think about it. It didn't even register that it wouldn't come equipped with a clicky drag. That sucks. Like, I'm not even gonna lie. Like, that... Like, I don't even want the reel anymore. I don't care how it casts. It's about enjoyment, right, guys? When you're when you're fishing BFS, BFS is definitely even if you're very proficient at it, doesn't matter what weights you're throwing, 1/16 of an ounce, 32nd of an ounce, 1/8 of an ounce, 1/4 ounce, whatever you call BFS or finesse. When you're bushwhacking and bank beating a river, using a bait caster, you assume the liability that you catch something on the back cast, your trip is over. For real. Like, I've even gone to the extent of carrying spools of line with me. Because, hey, you can't always be aware of what's behind you when you're working your way down a bank. And all it takes is you to clip that one little twig on the back cast, like when you're bringing it around, and it's game over. It's like legitimately game over. I'm gonna have to definitely find an upgrade for that clicky drag. Really. Like, once you have that feature, you don't ask, well, why am I using this? I'm so like displeased with this reel at the moment. I barely use hex, so I don't have a good hex set. I don't want one either. All the same size. Aluminum screws, it feels like. Nothing that we haven't seen before. We have aluminum on what appears to be aluminum gearing. So that's not going to last forever, but this is not going to see extreme use. Lots of aluminum. Aluminum main shaft, aluminum gear. All that aluminum, and it's still not beating the Aldebaran. So, unless this thing is a true winner on the water, I don't see why the made in Thailand versus made in Japan Aldebaran that's been around for quite a while is going to be dethroned for the best and most enjoyable BFS reel to fart around with on the water. Like, seriously, if this has been out for a long time, all right, this is a new thing, you know what I mean? This has a clicky drag, this doesn't. This is heavier than this reel. It's, I don't know, man. I mean, the Airstream Custom had a freaking carbon fiber handle. This has the cheapo, run-of-the-mill, nothing fancy at all, aluminum. I mean, why is this more expensive than this? Seriously. I'm curious to see what this thing can do on the water. We're going to spool them both up with the same. I'm going to use 6-pound J-Braid Grand, which is one of the thinner braids. It breaks at like a half an ounce if you look at it funny. But it's the lightest braid that I've come across in the mainstream anyway that is easy to tie. 2-pound diameter Suffix Nanofill, which I was using for the last year and a half or so. Great line, hair thin. I can't stand tying knots with that thing. I really can't. You know, when you fish a lot and your fingers get chewed up and you get bass thumb, you get cuts from hooks and fish and whatever, you try to tie a knot with the fine braids, it just sticks and then unweaves and it's game over. You have to. It'll take you 20 minutes to tie a uni knot. I'm not even exaggerating. So we're gonna get these out on the water and see how they do. So stay tuned for video number 2. Yeah, so far I'm not in love with what I'm seeing. I like the fact that it's got a T-wing. Yay. Do I need it? I haven't seen an instance where I needed it, because the Airstream Custom was a brilliant caster. I had no problems throwing 1/16 of an ounce. No problems at all. Everything, like, so I'm willing to bet this might handle 1/16 of an ounce with a little bit more ease. But I don't have an issue with a 1/16 of an ounce. I mean, how much flower do you guys go with BFS? Are you guys throwing like 1/100th and distances, not just dangle them off the bank kind of deal? I know in tiny streams, you're only literally like using the rod as just a tool to drop the bait down wherever you're going. But are you casting 1/100th or 1/64th? I mean, 1/32, I'm fine all day. But this reel here. Not with fluorocarbon. If I ever put out a review on fishing line and it's not braid and it's not referring to monofilament or fluorocarbon in leader only, don't pay attention to whatever the hell I have to say. I hate any and all fluorocarbon and mono as a main line. This is that new Suffix Nano fluorocarbon in a 4-pound. It's stretchy as hell. I'm missing. I can't adjust to straight braid. I've been fishing straight braid for 20 years, so. And we're all tying a PR knot or an FG knot or an Alberto knot to a leader. So I'm taking this stuff off. It's garbage as far as I'm concerned. It's not as good as braid. And the wild trout that I fish in the clear streams, they don't care that I'm using 2-pound braid, and they don't care if I got a leader. So I'll be taking this off. We're going with 6-pound J-Braid Grand, which is J-Braid Grand is my least favorite of the new braids. It just so happens I have a spool that I wasn't planning on using because it's so bad and it breaks so easily if you look at it funny. But it's perfect for what we're going to be doing. So stay tuned for that. So, not impressed. Not impressed. Now we were going to start with that little, what was that, a Yozeri snap bean or goby or whatever the hell it's called. But we tied these up. This is a, if you can recognize that, just a net head jig. And ooh, something's doing something over there. What is that? I'm having some shant. I don't know if those were trout uptight. There's a smallmouth chasing the young of the year. If it was a carp. If there are bluegills in tight, maybe on beds. All the smallies are off their beds now. There's a bed right there. That might be a bluegill bed. That's not a smallie bed. Oh yeah, bed. Yeah, these are all bluegill beds. But we tied ourselves a little 0.165. No, it's less than an eighth of an ounce, whatever that is. Ooh, okay, first cast. We weren't even really thinking, to be honest. Okay, so what we saw over here are just all the guys on beds. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to use a jig, but we wanted to keep the weight down. The second you add a plastic trailer, you're way, way, way over what I would consider ultra light. So we're gonna go ahead and we set the brakes to 8 to start. So I'm gonna see how that works out. Seems pretty good. Got bumped the second hit the water. A little bump. We want that good bump. Casting is to be expected. I have to adjust my thumb positioning because what I'm finding is I'm thumbing it when I don't want to be. So I have to clear my thumb a little bit more. It's kind of a cramped spool box. I mean, it's tough to just glide over. And in terms of clips, we have a Mustad Fest. Alright, now with this little jig, let's go ahead and see how it does with accuracy. We gotta go underneath. We want to hit that bank. So we gotta go low. Wow. It does so very, very comfortably. What about repeatability? Let's see if we can go back under there again. Beautiful. All right, now we're back with the same rod, same lure, only we switched up to the Aldebaran, and during the switch we had a catastrophe of sorts. Grabbed myself a Gatorade this morning off the counter, went to guzzle me some Fierce Grape goodness, only to find out that it was low calorie goodness. So we're gonna have to guzzle some nuts real quick. We do calories or mileage, no way, no frame. I don't know what you say there. But anyway, let's go ahead and twist up some more braid with this little Panther Martin, which is absolutely tiny. I think that's the smallest one they make. Right off the bat, one thing that's immediately noticeable, which you wouldn't notice unless you switch from one to the other, that's what I mentioned earlier. The access to the spool via thumb is definitely a lot more free, a lot more less impeded. So we have the brake settings set to almost 5. We do have the extra magnet installed. Knocked it down to 4. That's better. And the other thing that's immediately noticeable is the higher retrieve rate. So even though the other one's an 8.6 to 1, the smaller, shorter spool retrieves significantly less line. And I'm also noticing, I'm trying to cast out there. The other Daiwa ALPHAS AIR had a straighter trajectory. So we're gonna have to go down even further. We're going down to like 3 1/4 on the dial. I think that was a little better. We do have no spool tension at all. We don't believe in spool tension. Not here at Tackle Advisors. That's what brakes and thumbs are for. And I also noticed that achieving the same distance, the spool wants to continue shedding line at splashdown. So there is something to that Alpha Air spool that does add a little bit more casting control with a straighter trajectory. So we're going to find out just a little bit more. I mean, I've fished this reel for years, so I know what it's capable of and I know what it's good at and what it could use improvements on. I'm not worried about catching fish on it because I've put tons and tons of incredible fish on this reel. This has been a workhorse for me. One of the most routinely used reels in my arsenal, believe it or not. Yeah, the higher gear ratio, or the lower gear ratio of the bigger spool, I'm finding it, I'm more comfortable with the retrieve rate of that ALPHAS. I'm also finding that you have to be a little bit more competent a caster with this reel and the stock spool. Now, if you go down to a KTF spool and lighten it up a little bit or something along those lines, you'll have a little bit more control. I would assume similar to that of the ALPHAS AIR. But again, that's an extra $100 if you can get them. The other big difference, this is huge for me. The Clicky Drag. Now the Clicky Drag on mine has been quieted up a bit, so I have to take it apart, maybe stretch that spring back out, take a look, maybe there's some grease on it making it kind of quieter. But I really enjoy that Clicky Drag. Now one thing we just tested when we checked the drag tension, that ALPHAS drag is monstrous in comparison. So if you're planning on using this for what I'm doing, ultralight lures for smallmouth, trout, bluegill, small streams, rivers, creeks, or just true finesse tactics where you're using 32nd, 16th of an ounce lead heads with small, soft plastics, I don't see the need to go to the Alpha. I really don't. This reel weighs less, it's more compact, it palms nicer, and access, if you want to fish one-handed like this, is much easier. I'm much more efficient with it. I can hit the handle, not just the drag star, whereas the Alphas is a significantly wider reel all in. We have to make a conscious effort to slow down the retrieve. I find myself fishing lower geared reels more so than a 7.1, and when I do fish this, I do have to make that conscious effort to make sure that I'm not retrieving my hand movement at the same rate as the other reels. I mean, I throw spinnerbaits and jigs with spinnerbaits. I prefer like a low gear on the Calcutta DC, like a 5 and change. I really like that because you just rip on the handle to get it to simulate a bump and cover when it's out in open water away from cover. And I find myself a better fisherman with the lower geared reels. But that's to each their own. Some guys like the super speedy reels. I'm not a fan of them. One of my favorite reels is that 6.2 to 1 Bantam MGL. That, oh, something was behind it there. Oh, overrun. Oh, that's what I was saying before, but you have to be a little bit more in the zone, focusing on your casting and splashdown with this reel and its break versus the Alphas. Because when you're throwing ultralight stuff, especially jigs or spinners like this, when you have to pick out a backlash at the end of the cast, you may not get that lure back. I mean, it's one thing to, on the backswing, foul on a branch and blow up the whole reel. That's more of less, you know, is BFS worth it versus spinning gear? I mean, I find BFS far more enjoyable. And I have for almost 20 years, since the Daiwa Pixie was a thing. That was the originator, I guess you could say, of ultra finesse bait casters. It pales in comparison to this reel and the new Alphas, without a doubt. Another thing is, just with all these Shimano dials, they're kind of difficult to adjust. The numbers are kind of difficult to read on most of them. I'll give the edge there to the Alphas. It's just easier to adjust. The positive click detent, it's easy to move. You don't have to dig your fingernail in, and the numbers are clearly legible. And you know when you're going up one or down one. With this, it's a little bit different. Like, the numbers are just there, you know, as an indicator to let you know how far you moved. But, you know, a 3.75 setting is a thing on this reel. What are we at now? We're at 3 3/8. We're right under the half mark between the 3 and the 4. So if you're in a market for a BFS reel, you just want to fish out of the box, I don't think you can go wrong with either one. I think you'll enjoy the Aldebaran a little bit more, especially if you're a more competent caster. I think the Alphas offers a little bit better advantage in the control department while achieving the same distance. So I guess you can say that the casting of the Alphas is a little bit better when you're actually slinging baits. You can probably get a little bit better distance, but when you're throwing BFS for distance, you make one errant hero cast, and with 2-pound braid, 6-pound braid, 4-pound fluoro, an overrun can definitely lead into a break off with the 16-ounce lure. And anytime you overrun with ultralight braid and ultralight line, you damage that line. So the added control while achieving, there's a little fuzzy there too, the added control that you'll get out of the alphas in the long run when you're fishing line and you're not trying to re-spool every couple outings. Maybe all soft plastics. I don't see the need to go to the alpha. I really don't. This reel weighs less, it's more compact, it palms nicer, and access, if you want to fish one-handed like this, is much easier. I'm much more efficient with it. I can hit the handle, not just the drag star, whereas the Alphas is a significantly wider reel all in. We have to make a conscious effort to slow down the retrieve. I find myself fishing lower geared reels more so than a 7.1, and when I do fish this, I do have to make that conscious effort to make sure that I'm not retrieving my hand movement at the same rate as the other reels. Oh, overrun. Oh, that's what I was saying before, but you have to be a little bit more in the zone, focusing on your casting and splashdown with this reel and its break versus the Alphas. Because when you're throwing ultralight stuff, especially jigs or spinners like this, when you have to pick out a backlash at the end of the cast, you may not get that lure back. I mean, it's one thing to, on the backswing, foul on a branch and blow up the whole reel. That's more of less, you know, is BFS worth it versus spinning gear? I mean, I find BFS far more enjoyable, and I have for almost 20 years, since the Daiwa Pixie was a thing. Another thing is, just with all these Shimano dials, they're kind of difficult to adjust. The numbers are kind of difficult to read on most of them. I'll give the edge there to the Alphas. It's just easier to adjust. The positive click detent, it's easy to move. You don't have to dig your fingernail in, and the numbers are clearly legible. And you know when you're going up one or down one. With this, it's a little bit different. Like, the numbers are just there, you know, as an indicator to let you know how far you moved. But, you know, a 3.75 setting is a thing on this reel. What are we at now? We're at 3 3/8. We're right under the half mark between the 3 and the 4. So if you're in a market for a BFS reel, you just want to fish out of the box, I don't think you can go wrong with either one. I think you'll enjoy the Aldebaran a little bit more, especially if you're a more competent caster. I think the Alphas offers a little bit better advantage in the control department while achieving the same distance. So I guess you can say that the casting of the Alphas is a little bit better when you're actually slinging baits. You can probably get a little bit better distance, but when you're throwing BFS for distance, you make one errant hero cast, and with 2-pound braid, 6-pound braid, 4-pound fluoro, an overrun can definitely lead into a break off with the 16-ounce lure. And anytime you overrun with ultralight braid and ultralight line, you damage that line. So the added control while achieving, there's a little fuzzy there too, the added control that you'll get out of the Alphas in the long run when you're fishing line and you're not trying to re-spool every couple outings, may be an advantage. Even though this is a more compact, lighter, it's a clicky drag, yada yada yada. So it's I don't want to say it's a wash. This is definitely more enjoyable to fish, without a doubt. But the fish here decided that they had enough of my Panther Martin. How do we miss that? All right. This is backlash review. Shows that I'm not using any spool tension. So anyway, Lucky Craft, little snacky, 1/16 of an ounce, little tiny bait, little tiny hooks, little tiny clip, brake set to 8, backhand, no drama. Actually went a pretty good ways. This is not a very good casting bait. This is a bait that, when using the Aldebaran, all hands must be on deck. I kid you not. Especially when you're looking to hit the opposite bank and swing it. It's not a very good casting bait for its size and weight on a bait caster. Now I use a little bit of thumbing there. I'm gonna knock it up to 9. I'm curious to see how it'll cast because it's pretty tame at 8. I ain't gonna lie. We'll go down to 7 afterwards, so right up to 9. That is 9, right? Bye-bye distance with the same effort. So we lost about 10 foot with the same effort. But what happens when we actually give it a little snap? Okay. We're only about, we probably lost about 15 feet with the last one, but we're only about 5 foot shy with a little bit of effort. But there's no thumbing needed. That's interesting. Let's do a backhand. See if we can go up in that pocket up there. No thumb. Wow, it splashed down and the spool was stopped. That's cool. That's different. Not that the Aldebaran can't do it, but this is definitely doing it better. I should say it's doing it easier. It's still catching no fish the same. That was just an outright whip. I just wanted to see what would happen. And I didn't even have to thumb it. That's pretty funny. First day with our new legs. Okay, so 9, you're not looking to break any distance records. That's what happens when you throw with the brakes at the max. I'm curious. Oh. You can hand this to a baby deer and cast it. I'm gonna throw a pop fly and hopefully not hit the tree above me. What happens if I splat it down right in front of me? I would never do this with the Aldebaran. Wow. Just a loose coil. No, oh, yeah, a little bit. That's crazy. If you really want to put that much effort into it, you could fish this thing with the max brake. What is 15 like? This is when it gets fun. Again, 16th ounce, snaggy. And like I said earlier, we're gonna go down to 7. 7, and then the wind comes. Oof. Much freer. I don't know with the wind and the plane in the background if you heard it, but the spool was significantly faster. You heard the bearings. Yeah, that was a lot less effort. No drama either. Now let's go ahead now. Give yourself a little bit of room here and explore the lower nether regions of the braking. Wow. A little backhand action. No thumb. Only, see, there was no thumb at all. Not even a splashdown. I like it. I don't like the fact that it's as big as it is. I don't like the non-clicky. But everything else I like. I'll be damned. It's a safer reel to cast, without a doubt. There's no question. Because again, when you're miles away from your car, you're carrying one stick, all it takes is that one blow up. Very comfortable. Number 5. Oh no. we were just looking at the spool there. We weren't planning on going up on the other bank, so let's aim this direction. Scared me a little bit, thought I was going to break it off. If you heard that click, that was the rotor smacking against its tolerance. Sounded like a break off. Alright, so when you're at the 5 setting, it's all hands on deck. I don't like that sound. It sounds like the braid pops, which I've had this just doing this, exactly what I just did there on the Aldebaran. Not saying it's the Aldebaran's fault, it's the braid's fault. With a 1/16 of an ounce, snap. All right, so with the 1/16 of an ounce, it's just not worth it. I mean, you can thumb it if you want and feather it all you want if you want to show off to your friends and on the message board and say, oh, I cast my brakes off. Yeah, let's turn the brakes off, see how it does. That's exactly how it does. There's absolutely no reason to throw this reel with the brakes off. Unless you're like kind of dipping off of banks into like little pockets. Then there really isn't even need for that either. Let's see if we can get 0 to work. So we're still down at 0. Still no spool tension. And even letting go on the feather at the end, just to let it carry that little extra bit after that apex, she still wants to overrun. Speedy little spool. Alright, we're still at 0. Does 1 make a difference? A little bit, not much. Two. Nope. Feathered it in the beginning and let it go a little bit, and there wasn't even a curl that could come up and have the curl feather my thumb. Just immediately pop. That was a little bit more comfortable. And that is 3. That's a little bit more predictable. No, thumbed in the beginning and tried to let off again. Four. Now 4 is a setting that I usually fish often with my other Daiwa reels that have an SV brake. Still required some thumbing. That was thumbing in the beginning and still thumbing, but letting off more towards the middle. Yeah, 4 is doable. We caught the brightest green leaf in the world. And 5. Barely, just letting our thumb glide on the ridges of the spool. Now, again, with the Aldebaran, it's very rare that I'm in the bottom third, ever, even with the extra magnet on. Yeah, 6 is getting where it's kind of safe and comfy. 7, 8, and 9. So 6, 7, 8, and 9. If you're looking to just get out on the water and know what to expect, very comfortable. And again, don't use spool tension. Anybody out there BFS fishing, spool tension is literally defeating the whole purpose of having an ultralight spool. The second you add spool tension, it's like adding weight to the spool. Why would you want to do that? Thumbed it at splashdown, and that was it. So, I guess our time spent today was worth it. I initially didn't think this reel was worth its metal and its price tag over the Airstream or the Aldebaran, or retrofitting a reel with a BFS spool like an Abu or some older Daiwas or Shimanos. But the Aldebaran being one of the better BFS reels, the Abu Garcia with that IVCV brake being one of the better BFS setups, this is really nice. Like, that's a good cast with a tiny, tiny bait. So yeah, spent a little bit of time really just trying to figure out the differences between the two and really getting a feel for this. Again, I've put a couple thousand fish on the Aldebaran, so I know what to expect. So when I'm telling you that in order to get that straight trajectory off the rod tip, you're sacrificing control at the mid and end point of the cast, it's because you better have your thumb ready to rock and roll for when you're throwing the white stuff. Again, we're talking real stock out of the box without upgrading the spool, which you shouldn't have to, you know what I mean? Oh, look at me, not paying attention. We didn't complete our casting stroke due to the wind. So yeah, and one last thing to consider. I got this in the mail today. I'm not familiar with it at all whatsoever, and immediately it felt comfortable. It felt capable and safe while being able to perform just like what I've been used to with that Aldebaran in terms of casting, trajectory, weight ranges. Could I go lower with smaller baits? I don't fish like trout magnets and stuff like that. So what you saw today is as low as I go. But yeah, this was a learning experience. So I was really going to say, no, wow, this isn't worth it all whatsoever. But after really kind of fiddling around and trying different things and seeing that, yeah, it's close. I mean, you can't go wrong with either one, but trouble-free casting performance, this wins out. The other thing, important to note, I don't use fluorocarbon. I've used it a few times, but I found with the Aldebaran, if you do have an overrun, the loops will find their way into the gap between the spool and the frame and bind up. The tolerance on that is some shit. Like that's nothing. Which surprise? What am I doing? Like I'm reaching with my thumb because I'm letting my hand get too far back in the rear seat and I'm missing since I'm talking. Which surprises me that they have a drag setting so high, because with the drag setting super high, yeah, the spool's narrow, so it's not going to torque the spool, but it can. If somebody's going to put 10-pound braid on here or 20-pound braid, and that tolerance, you're going to be rubbing frame real quick. So, gotta be careful with that. Whereas the Aldebaran, it's almost intentionally limited to like nothing. Like if you're using a worm hook or that's for throwing soft plastics, you got to really wrench that drag down. Not the case with this one. Good swallow. Oh, real good swallow. Real good swallow. Come on, girl. I don't want to fight you for too much longer. Come on. You're a giant. I see the jig. It's in a good spot. You might get a shot at the land. Oh, I don't think it's in a good spot. Let me get you up. Right? This rod's about as loaded up as it can get. Down on one knee for it, babe. That's a 4.5 pound. Perfect spot. Not even in the cartilage of the jaw. Look at you. Look at you. You're probably 5 pounds. You're a monster. You're 22, 23. You're behemoth river smallmouth. Behemoth. Thank you, buddy. Whew. Fired up. Brownie? Man, these things are wild. Look at this. Absolutely beautiful brown. He looks like he's a 10-pound brown out of Alaska. Oh. Thanks, little guy. And they smoke it! Oh man, imagine if you were 5 pounds. My God. Such a beautiful fish. I don't know if you heard the drag. It's like little tiny fish pull drag. Would never have caught him with anything but a panther martin. I swear to God, I never caught a brown trout in 30 years of fishing at this spot. Put on a panther martin, wild brown trout. First time I ever threw a panther martin that hole ever. Go figure. First hit from a reel. Oh, there we go. Look how crazy. Oh, thank you. I prefer that. Look how crazy that rainbow was. And you tell me that's not a wild trout. You try to convince me that fish was stocked here this past spring. There's really nothing out there like a wild brown or a big wild rainbow. Rainbows are some of the fastest fish on the planet when it comes to freshwater rivers and streams. Like, they rocket all over the place. Oh, look at it. Look how crazy this fish is. Another rainbow. I haven't caught rainbows in this stretch. We're not even gonna grab the lure. We won't let hurt his jaw. Thank you, my friend. They're such fired up little animals. Beautiful too. That fish had all its fins. That was a wild trout. The stock trout in New Jersey, they clip their fins. Oh. There you are. You are a beast. Oh, come on, really? You're gonna run away from a jig? How you gonna run away from a jig like that? That was a good cast. How you gonna do that? You're the biggest smallmouth in the river. I got BFS gear. I don't understand. How dare you? How dare you? My reel's from Japan, don't you know? I'm using a tungsten weighted jig with titanium weed guards. Come on.